Another ranger shows off a small cache of weapons and recovered tusks, a sure sign that they're slowly succeeding. The Okapis have survived the turmoil in the chaotic Central African country, but whether they will survive this new invasion remains to be seen. From the air, the forest appears to extend largely untouched as far as the eye can see, but closer to the ground, humans are using the forest for wealth, while destroying the environment for the animals.
Here at the London Zoo, an international campaign is on to save one of the most mystical and mysterious creatures of the oceans, the seahorse. They're the stuff of legends, but pollution, habitat destruction, and low birth rate mean seahorses have been placed on the vulnerable list. One species has been classified as endangered. The seahorse has a very unusual breeding ritual, with the male and female forming a bond that has them sticking together for life. They reinforce this every morning with a little courtship dance by linking their tails and swimming through the sea grasses. They are like chameleons with a unique ability to change colour and camouflage into their background. When the female's eggs are ripe, they go into a full mating dance. The female passes the eggs into the male's pouch. It then seals up and the eggs develop into perfect miniature seahorses, all within the protection of the pouch. While most fish spawn millions of eggs, the seahorse will produce as few as 25 young. Seahorses are so fragile that when kept in aquariums, rarely survive. They don't have stomachs and therefore have very specific feeding requirements. Project Seahorse is operating through the UK, Canada, North America, the Philippines and Hong Kong. Biologists will work in local communities re-educating fishermen and other groups in the value of conserving and encouraging dwindling seahorse populations. Other than humans, the only enemy this unique creature has is the crab. Let's make sure we change that so it has a chance to survive.
It's a beautiful, crisp morning and the trainers are out for their morning exercise. It's an image that most people around the world can recognise. These stables are very famous in the racing world as the home of the Scepter, who in 1902 won 4 of the domestic British classics. Now the ancient countryside, close to Stonehenge, looks set to take racehorse training into the 21st century, with technology developed by the new stables manager, Dr. Jeremy Naylor. He is one of the brains in equine performance, and in just a few months his results have attracted owners from around the country. Dr. Naylor's first training success came with Daphne's Doll, who won a major race just a few months after he set up in business. His new approach combines his skill as a former vet and sports physiologist, using training techniques that are commonly used on human athletes. Special electrodes attached to the horses allow riders to monitor and record the horse's heart rate during training sessions. Analysis of the heart rate response and blood samples taken immediately afterwards is downloaded onto a computer, allowing the doctor to assess how the horse's heart and muscles are performing and modify the training sessions accordingly. His scientific approach of using traditional training methods keeps the horses happy and willing to race, while getting the best result out of the animal. Dr. Naylor's methods could help produce a rival to Scepter, who was regarded by many as the greatest racehorse of all time. The stables have become a scientific testing environment, and so far the results have been so positive that the next champion could only be a gallop away.
Still on a horsey theme, maybe these young guys could be the next champions. They are the first test tube foals born in Europe, using a technique that could be used to produce genetically modified horses. The two foals were born as part of a program designed to produce champion show jumping, dressage and eventing horses. They were created by a revolutionary technique where a single sperm is artificially fused with an egg and monitored for 11 days before being placed into a surrogate mother. It is the first time ever that horse embryos have been kept alive so long in the laboratory. Professor Twink Allen of the Equine Fertility Unit says the program could have a variety of benefits. He says that in addition to being able to breed better horses quickly for the top athletes, he can foresee a day when scientists can identify bad genes that might cause disease and eliminate them. The work could help in the conservation of threatened species and make it easier to breed champions. The foals are set to change the sporting world. Whether it becomes acceptable is another question. Like it or not, this type of technology is here to stay.
On a sunny morning off a coastal village in Vietnam, fishermen start a new day feeding lobsters in their pens. In 1992, the industry was small, with around 10 cages. Now, thanks to the research by a scientist, the industry has grown and there are around 1,000 cages. This growth has helped the local fishermen, who have been working with the scientists to learn all about breeding lobsters. Lobsters are crustaceans and come from one of two groups, one with large claws, the other with none. They are covered by a strong shell that is reinforced to protect the internal organs and the head. During mating seasons, the females can carry up to 600,000 eggs. That's heaps of brothers and sisters to have to share with. Scientists from the Agricultural Research Institute are frequent visitors to the spawning lobster pens to see how the breeding is going. But the path to success today is not easy. It took Thu and her staff nearly 10 years to do their research, and they don't have much funding for laboratory work. In the early 1990s, when she was experimenting with different methods of breeding the two species most suited to the local conditions, the ornate rock lobster and the green scalloped lobster, she found the best way was to work with local fishermen. They have helped her experiment in raising lobsters in their natural environment. Since the first trials, many local families have started breeding lobsters, and they've learnt a lot about Thu's finding on stocking and feeding. Thu has learned from them too. Vietnam exports lobsters to China, Japan, Hong Kong and Thailand. Economically, raising lobsters has made a great contribution to creating jobs and stabilising the lives of the fishermen, Thu said. Scientifically, we need to study more in order to make this business sustainable. For example, we need to actively breed pre-juvenile lobsters and their food, she added. For the local fishermen, breeding is much safer than the traditional method of deep-sea diving for lobsters. They have built thousands of pens, which are placed about 4 metres deep. The fishermen purchase tiny juvenile lobsters that are dredged from the ocean and feed them twice daily with small fish. However, Thu and the fishermen are discovering environmental issues that need to be addressed. The uneaten food, which rots and emits poison, threatens the lobster stock. Fishermen are therefore advised to dive to the bottom of their pens to scrape up the uneaten food and to bury it on land. The new methods of breeding lobsters have brought big economical benefits to the coastal villages in Vietnam. This year, the price of lobsters has ranged from $22 to $28 per kilogram. Thanks to the lobsters, the fishermen's lives have changed dramatically. The lobster is a popular and expensive dish in a restaurant. The research has allowed the fishermen to produce prime stocks. It has also allowed more control over the breeding. Science is often working with industry to find a quicker, cleaner and more environmental way to develop products. This research has given the people of the village a positive growth and allowed them to have a better lifestyle while taking care of the lobster stock and the environment. This is science lending a huge helping hand to this little fishing town.
The busy bumblebee goes from flower to flower, making honey from the sugary liquid produced, called nectar. It's thought at least 4 species of bumblebee are now extinct. The bees are a very important link to farming because they pollinate both wildflowers and commercial crops, particularly tomatoes and strawberries. Their falling numbers are blamed on modern farming methods, the increased use of pesticides and loss of hedgerows in recent years. Scientists are using a DNA fingerprinting technique to mark and match some 300 bees from different farm sites. They are trying to work out the most popular places bees like to be, so they can compare different farming styles and different ways of managing the countryside that the bees like best. The bees live for only 8 short weeks, but in this time manage to build, supply and take care of the hive. The worker may visit 500 to 1,000 blossoms before her honey sac is full. By identifying which bees are worker bees and where they come from, the scientists can work out what areas and conditions are best for them to increase the numbers again. I don't know who is the busiest, the bees or the scientists.
And now for an unusual story to finish up with. Here at the Samat Prakan Crocodile Farm, 30 kilometres southeast of Bangkok, rare baby crocodile Siamese twins were born joined at the hips. The tiny pair have been attracting attention from far and wide. But the park's executive director doesn't know how to take care of the rare twins and has launched an internet appeal for advice. More than 200 baby crocodiles have hatched at the farm every day. But it's the first time the carers have had to deal with co-joined or Siamese twins. The reptiles seem to be in good health and each has its own separate internal organs. The major problem is they share the same anal cavity. The vets say it's too soon to operate to separate the tiny pair. Female crocodiles lay between 4 to 21 eggs in a nest. Usually 60% of the eggs are lost due to predators or flooding. The baby crocodiles are born with an egg tooth, which they use to cut themselves out of their egg. When the mother crocodile hears her babies, she digs them out of their covered nest and carries them down to the water in her mouth. Not something I'd like to experience. Siamese babies are formed when the twin embryos fail to separate after the 13th day of fertilisation. The name comes from famous twins Eng and Chang, who were born in Siam, now Thailand. It seems Thailand is now producing another famous pair. Samat Prakan Crocodile Farm is said to be one of the largest in the world and has about 150,000 of the reptiles. So if you want to see some unusual sights, you better snap to it. We hope you've enjoyed our animal special. We look forward to seeing you next week on Totally Awesome.